Hello, everyone. Dr. Ames here. This time, I'd like to talk to you about direct marketing. Now, direct marketing, usually when we hear that term, we tend to think of direct mail. But there's so much more to direct marketing than direct mail, and certainly that has always been a huge part of it. So here's our learning objectives for this time. We'll talk about direct marketing, what's its purpose, why is it so popular, we'll talk about the early origins, mailing lists, which led to mailing lists and so forth, and then the use today of marketing databases, of course. And then we'll talk a little bit about the media channels that are available to us to deliver our direct marketing messages that we really want to use. Direct marketing has changed over time. And so usually when we talk about direct marketing, we're talking about an interactive process that we put together as marketers. And it's not about a single message or a single channel, a one-time thing. It's about a promotional campaign that's put together carefully using multiple media channels. And the idea is use a consistent message that is simple, direct, and to the point, that conveys the exact message you want to create the sort of mindset and behavior you want in your consumers, and you want to be able to measure it in some way. So that's really quite a lot when you think about it that direct marketing is trying to do for us. And so the interactive part, well, really the whole purpose of direct marketing is to get the consumer to respond and engage with us in some way. And hopefully go beyond just paying a little bit of attention to our message and actually engaging in some ongoing dialogue with us. And so to accomplish that, we have to use multiple media. And so it's much more than just the direct mail advertisement that might be one of the most important tools in it. It'd be about being part of a larger IMC promotional campaign that would use a combination of channels and so forth to produce your message. So you would like to get, if possible, an immediate appraisal or assessment of how you're doing, measure those responses. And a direct marketing campaign usually is designed so that you can generate some sort of immediate response or sale, a transaction even, with the consumer. And this ought to be able to happen today because of technology at any location. Consumers no longer have to visit stores, brick and mortar locations to get the services that fulfill their needs and wants, as well as the goods that they need and want, because so much is available online. And so consumers have such a variety of options. So do marketers have a variety of ways in which they can influence and reach those consumers so they can indeed and get them to engage with you. So here are some of the milestones that we see along the way as direct marketing has developed over time. So we go all the way back to, if we want to, and would say the printing press. Gutenberg's printing press certainly meant that from here on out, we have the printed message that can reach over time lower down through levels of society until indeed today, the printed message is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. But even farther back, move forward a little bit in time, it's late 1600s. We had the first catalog, and it was a gardening catalog. And that's what people were interested in those times, of course. Life was generally centered around agricultural pursuits. And so a catalog of seeds and plants and things like that that were available from some merchants was available. Now you have to imagine that certainly this was very regional and local in scope at the time. And then we jump to the mid almost 1700s, and here Ben Franklin enters the picture. He publishes a catalog on new science developments and industry, new books on industry, manufacturing, and so forth. And he came up with the concept that customer satisfaction was guaranteed in anything that he would sell to you. And then we moved to the late 1800s. Montgomery Ward established the first catalog. And so the catalog became the mainstay of their entire business, not just something else like Ben Franklin used it, who had many hats, and Ben Franklin did many ventures over time. But Montgomery Ward here was not just an individual exploring and experimenting with new ways to do things. They actually had built the business enterprise on that first catalog. And then we moved to the late 1800s, nearly the beginning of the 20th century. And we see a company called Sears starting the first mail order business where people could actually use the mail to order products. We moved to the early 20th century, around the time of the First World War, 1912, L.L. Bean, another noteworthy name in business, founded the mail order company selling hunting shoes as their first product. In 1917, we had our first professional association, the Direct Marketing Advertising Association was founded. Just another 10 years or so later, third-class bulk mail was introduced. Now, this had a revolutionary impact, as you can imagine, because if we're dealing with catalogs and mail order, we certainly are relying on the U.S. Postal Service. And so being able to introduce a reduced rate for those advertisers or marketers or just manufacturers and so forth who had products to sell and needed to reach the public, this really made it a little bit more cost effective. We jump ahead a little bit. 1950, the first credit card. Well, with the first credit card, what we find is that consumers now can buy things without having to go somewhere in person. This is a huge leap forward. In 1951, Lilly & Vernon, another company that still has mail order catalogs today. They advertised the first centralized family of products that they had for sale, purses, belts, and they really did spend all of their time and energy and money building a catalog online, not an online, but a catalog mail order company. In 1953, a very familiar name emerges. The Publishers Clearinghouse became a force, a definite force for selling magazine subscriptions, and indeed became a real champion of direct mail advertising and so forth. 1967, much more recent, AT&T introduced the first toll 800 number. This, like the third mail bulk mailing permits, offered another way for marketers and manufacturers of goods and services and so forth to engage the customer, to get them to call you. Well, if it doesn't cost the customer anything and they can do it without visiting a store, then this is a quick way to introduce an engagement feature that is also measurable. And then in 1992, much more recently even, we started noticing that there are 100 million shoppers who are shopping from home now. And this is through mail order and so forth. And 1992 was the beginning of the online revolution, where in 92, the internet was still slow, browsers were still slow, our ability to transmit pictures and information was still in its infancy, so to speak, for us as consumers. But things, as you know, have moved rapidly since then. So some of the basics to talk about with direct marketing is that it did evolve from this, original legacy of mail order companies that are still, many of them around today. So they are true giants in the field, catalog merchandisers and so forth. But we always want to keep in mind that direct marketing must be integrated into the overall IMC or the promotional effort if you want it to work, if you want it to be effective. It's proven to work as part of a greater project. So modern direct marketing characteristics include trying to engage the customer in some way to get them to respond. So you want to interact with them, create a dialogue, and hopefully an ongoing dialogue. You do it by using multiple media, so that means different channels to reach the customer with a very similar and consistent, if not identical, message. And then you want to be able to measure how you're doing along the way. So the tools that you use are things that you can measure response to and so forth. Now for today, it's all about getting that sale. That's why you're trying so hard to create a dialogue and engage consumers and get them to respond. You want to close the sale. That's the ultimate objective. And so a systematic direct mail follow-up, like it says here, will enhance and reinforce the strength of your other promotional efforts. You want to cultivate prospects. You want to get new customers and users and so forth, as well as reminding your brand loyal users that you're still out there and here you are, easy to reach. So not only do you want to reach your future customers, but you also want to reach your current customers, and you want to give those future customers sales promotion things that work on them. So point of purchase types of items and sales promotional items like free samples and special offers and coupons and deals. Call the 800 number and get a free video. Call the 800 number and we'll give you a 2-for-1 deal so that you get what in the mind of the consumer would be perceived as value. So your objective is to close the sale, and to do that, you must get customers to engage with you. And of course, it's not easy because that's what all the other marketers are doing with the competitive products and so forth. So you give your customers information. You ask them what they think about things. You reward them when they buy something from you. You give them more than they expected. You give them incredible service. And then overall, this package of effort should result in some brand loyalty and so forth, and maybe accumulating, if you're lucky, some new consumers who hopefully will over time be heavy users or at least brand loyal users. So that's what it's about, engaging with people, creating the dialogue, getting the response, and it's about creating that brand loyalty. So if this works, then user groups are created who you can market to specifically. You can provide discounts and special offers, like I've said, and all sorts of things, reminding people that you're out there and you still have their best interests at heart and that you're there to solve their needs and wants. So direct marketing certainly is increasingly popular, and it has been over time. It's gained in popularity and its usage has been very effective. In other words, it works. It's easy for consumers to use, so it's convenient. They can review information at any time of day or evening when it's convenient for them and easy. The consumer society in America in particular, but around the world, the middle class that has access to the use of credit has no compunction or problems with using credit. And in fact, credit cards are the major form of payment used in much of today's direct mail advertising efforts. And so things like the toll numbers do matter. These advances in technology have moved along the marketing efforts and simply changed the way things were done. Instead of having everything be mailed to people, now people can connect online at their own leisure when they want to do it, how they want to do it, with a phone call, to talk to a real person or go online. But as you can see today, with mobile, wireless, the cloud, 5G, streaming technologies have changed the face of business and indeed the way that consumers interact with brands and the way they think about brands. So it is certainly part of the picture that you constantly think about, well, how am I doing? How's the assessment going? And so you find out how much have I spent and how much did it cost to get each of those inquiries that come in, and how much did it cost if I divide it out for every order, and so forth. This is the same thing we've been doing in business in other ways, in other fields of business. And so this is a good way to understand what the program is costing you, and a good way to understand if you're profitable and actually are having an impact or not. So you'll look back at data over time using that management controlling function, of course, and you'll make comparisons and predictions and so forth. So today, we're in the world of database marketing. We use mailing lists because we can identify people as regular users, brand loyal, heavy users, switchers or variety seekers, whatever it might be. We can purchase lists of people who may be potential future customers. And that's really what it's about. We want to expand our market share and our revenue, of course, as a result of that. And so we use database marketing. Well, everything in business today relies on database. This is where we store our information. This is where we run our reports and get everything we need. But the really reliance on database information to make our promotional campaigns work, and in particular direct marketing, probably distinguishes it a little bit more than other tools used in advertising. I mean, you are using captured information that is accumulated over time, that has been added to over time to make decisions, to find people, consumers who have wants and needs that you can fill. And so you often are able to do what we call data mining, of course. Using database technology, we can drill down on any given report and get successively more detailed reports and find things out. So we're really talking about demographics and all sorts of statistical information related to identifying our target segments. So these mailing lists are a big part of that when it comes to direct marketing. These mailing lists reflect people who have been established as some type of user or a potential user who might be inclined to be receptive to your message. So you get contact information that is useful, and you really can be very specific about it when you purchase this information or have it in your own database storage. You can find out and track people indeed who are your best customers and so forth. So mailing lists are incredibly important to this notion of direct marketing. And it's really just a file. It has people's names and addresses or email address. It might have their, and so forth, where you can reach them on Facebook, what their IP addresses might be for their various devices. There are different ways you can go about this. These things are all over the internet. There are many companies that provide them. You should just do your homework as a company and make sure you're dealing with a reputable firm that will give you, they will say, in the past, our mailing lists have produced this percentage of result. In other words, a response rate. And if it's 1 to 3% or 4%, okay. But check around and see, is that what everybody's offering? What do their clients say and so forth? And just make an intelligent decision here. This stuff is publicly available. With a little investigation, you can find good companies and even indeed those who specialize in certain products or markets. So they come from information that different firms, think tanks, marketers themselves, companies that make products or provide services, they know about people and they know about what they do for their activities of their lives and so forth. If you sign up for a newsletter or something, you're going to go into a database, obviously. If you order from a catalog, you're in a database. If you order online from Amazon or Walmart or Home Depot or anything. If you ever fill out a warranty request and mail it to a manufacturer, redeem a rebate, apply for a credit card, join a professional organization of any type, log on to and give personal information and create an account on any website to get information. You are therefore putting yourself into databases for different reasons. And once you're in there, depending on who owns the database and who has access to it, then information will be added to over time. And so this is a common practice in America. Now, one thing to mention here, this is very cultural. The EU, for example, does not believe in this type of information gathering and retention. In fact, companies that operate in the EU have to sign agreements to say that we will not capture private data about people and then putting in databases and keep it for perpetuity to use it to market these people later. That's a no-no. It's an invasion of privacy from the EU's point of view, and companies have been and are continuously fined for violating their agreements to do this. But that just shows you that American business is slightly different in some ways. It's quite aggressive. I would say this would be an aggressive use of personal information. And, not all consumers agree with the idea that they ought to keep capturing all this information about me and so forth. So there is some controversy there about invasion of privacy. And it's up to us to, if we don't like the current situation, to try and pass legislation to change it. But there are two types of these lists that you can find online. The internal lists, which you get from companies that have accumulated them themselves. So they're lists really of their customers, subscribers, donors, those sorts of things. And then external lists, which are purchased from companies that have nothing to do with that. They've accumulated information and that's what they trade in and so forth. So both are valid places to get it. If you get an internal list, sometimes a company has to be careful. Do you really want your competitors to be able to have easy access to your list of customers? And so there are things to think about. External lists are a little more neutral, but again, they are working on the notion of segmentation. So they are narrow in scope and so forth. Now, your list, you really want to add to the list as much as possible. In other words, to the entries in the list, you want to know as much about each person as possible. So there are ways using database technology to combine the information from different lists about the same person, and you end up with a more robust situation on information. So you can merge your own internal list with what you find externally, and it may be there's some common people who are in both lists. It's totally possible, depending. Merging adds new people to your internal list. Certainly, it increases your mailing list to potential customers, and it's easy to see once you've got that merged list who is a current customer, who has the potential to be a future customer. Geo demographic, we're talking about location. And so this can be done lots of different ways. Zip code certainly is the easiest, and there are companies out there like Claritas and others who provide this geodemographic data. And it's somewhat striking how accurate it can be by looking at a zip code and saying, these are the groups of consumers who live there. And this is all the demographics that we've been able to accumulate about them. Psychographic data is much more qualitative. Lifestyle, values, interests, attitudes, opinions, values, things that are much more hard to define and aren't as easily traceable other than through certain products and things that show trends in your behavior. And then, of course, behavior data, information about the things that you bought in the past, services that you've engaged in, and interactions you've had, and companies that you're obviously a loyal user of, or heavy user, or brand loyal. So it gives marketers in general knowledge about your preferences. Sometimes these marketers might know more about you as a consumer than you've ever thought of knowing about yourself. So marketing databases are absolutely integral to the process of direct advertising and to marketing in general today. The databases do grow over time, and they have been growing for decades now. And they have individual data about, as you can see, most of us out there in America who have ever bought anything or signed up for anything, where our name is going to be in there somewhere. There is rich data about us for companies that want to find it out. But what has it allowed us to do? Mass customization and so forth. We can find out quicker and easier ways to reach the people that we want and say, not only will we sell you a t-shirt, but you can pick the size, you can pick the color, you can pick the design on it. You can pick whether it's a man's or a woman's or a children's and so forth. And so mass customization allows us to sell a product to everybody that's more or less the same product, but with individual characteristics. And this is what we do and what we've always done. We go into stores and we look through clothing, say, to stick with that example. We look at different sizes, colors, textures, fabric, all of that sort of thing. Well, marketing databases are trying to give us as marketers all the information we need that is timely and relevant to a particular target segment that we're trying to identify. And so it is dynamic over time because it does add to and increase our understanding. And if we have that understanding about a target segment of consumers, then we are more efficient when we try and deal with it. In other words, we know whether the time of year is right to mail a certain type of product catalog out. We know if this is a regional sort of thing for a person. Those preferences kick in. And so we're able to tailor our messages very specially and individually to people within regions or localities that seem to work for us. And it's all because of the ability to draw upon this marketing database knowledge. So there's all sorts of things that we gain from this. So the applications are finding out who our users are, who are our most loyal and heaviest users of our brand. And then with, you know, the mailing lists and so forth that are available to us, we can find out who might be in that group of our potential consumers, a target segment of potential future customers that we could grab. So we can find out how much people spend on our products, how often do they spend, take an analysis of it, of when they do it, how many people respond to coupon offers, do discounts work or not? We're gathering information. Did the direct marketing campaign work or not? How many responses did we get? How long did it run? How many instances was it out there? How many sales did we get? How many engagements did we get? And so forth. These things, really, all this information enters the database, and we can compare how we did with this program, with this promotional program, how we did last year with the same thing next year, how these two different ones compared, and so forth. And then once we've got all this advanced information and increasingly rich data about our target segment consumers, then we start finding things that might appeal to them that are cross-selling other products and services similar, but within a family possibly, or relate to other needs that people in this consumer target segment might also have. And so we're always looking for ways to enhance the usage of our information and other ways to find revenue streams. So what media do we use? Well, for direct marketing, certainly direct mail. And that is what most of us I started out talking about think of. Direct mail is a carefully crafted marketing promotional piece that's been put together with a lot of love and effort that the public sometimes will say is junk mail and right into the trash can. But on the other hand, if we just look at it clinically from a marketing point of view, direct mail has been an effective technique over time, somewhat expensive, somewhat slow, but you can measure responses and so forth. You can make very specific catalogs and all of that. And then we've moved ahead as technology has moved ahead, and we do telemarketing and so forth. And you can really take a direct mail piece, which is a display ad or something like that, and deliver it online in different media channels. So we've gone to only having a display ad in a print medium to now having the display ad online in a variety of different channels on television and so forth, using graphics and all of that. So the direct mail piece is a little expensive. It's a little bit older, but we haven't abandoned it entirely because it's still effective, used in the right way and the right circumstances. We're not going to get giant percentages of engagement or return off any given mailing list. So many of them, you have to be careful. And this is why it's best to do your due diligence and make sure you're hiring a company that can give you the best, most obviously guaranteed percentage of response. Over time, our clients get 3 to 5% response. If you can get that, and it turns out to be that, you have no complaints, really. And you will use the tools available to you. Bulk mail, third-class permits. On the other hand, these things can be unpredictable. They can be, in today's environment in particular, a little bit inconsistent in delivery times, and prices certainly are going up for the U.S. Post Office, and they have been going up for some time. But you can use them very selectively and very much target individuals and groups of individuals, your segment. So direct mail is a medium that you can use for testing purposes also. What kind of response rate are we getting? And by mailing out this piece to people that we know have already shown an interest in the product or general services. And so there is some room to use this and now as a vehicle for experimentation to judge market sentiment and trends and in fact, consumer attitudes about something. And you don't have to have just printed matter. You can use CDs and DVDs. You can send out letters full of testimonials or tear out coupons or scannable coupons today and so forth that can be taken onto your telephone right into the store and used. So it's an expanding world as far as direct marketing goes. So the different media, well, I mentioned telemarketing, but what can you do with it? Well, you can selectively target individuals. You'll have, a list of people and so forth, and you're really going to be able to go after them specifically versus a shotgun approach, a push approach. So this is very much a pull approach, or if you can actually get the person to answer the phone and talk to you, if that's what you're doing, calling them on the phone, then that is success. And so it's person to person. That is always the best medium of all to get a response rate. If you can talk to somebody The only thing that beats that is face-to-face. And today it's not always going to be face-to-face, although increasingly we are finding that it is easier, and we'll have technology in the next decade or so where it's very commonplace to most of our calls will be end up being face-to-face virtually. Um, but there are the same limitations with telemarketing as there are with direct mail in general. There's a limited amount of time when you could call people, when you can reach them, really when people aren't working or aren't eating or having family time. You have to be careful how you go about it. And certainly the annoyance factor is there amongst a lot of consumers with telemarketers. And we have laws in some states and don't call lists. And we have apps that block the robocalls, so to speak, from telemarketers. So generally, you would have to say you would want to really consider carefully before this might be one of the tools you would use to push your direct mail idea because of the negativity that's associated with it and so forth. Today, email as well was fine in the beginning before we started to have so much criminal activity invade the domains of email usage. And so cyber attacks and phishing in particular are so harmful to company systems and the individual, causes ransomware attacks, all sorts of things. Today, it's a controversial tool. Email generally, even if it makes it in, it's going to go to junk mail maybe, or even be scammed by these various programs that organizations have that don't even have junk mail anymore. Everything is trapped, and you go look at your spam email address or your accumulations that come to you weekly in a report, and you get to look at it and say, I'll release this or not release it or block it forever and so forth. So maybe email isn't the way to go. But still, having said that, within a system, and once you get status within the system as a favorable user and a non-threatening user, you can reach people very directly and so forth. Generally, the only way you're going to get that sort of access is you'll get permission. People will say, yes, I will let in this email newsletter. And so finally, other things that you can do are tear out cards, which I say are slowly going to fall by the wayside as we move to more scannable technology. Again, you can take a picture of it with the camera on your telephone, and then immediately an URL pops up and you can click on that, and there with your device, your telephone or whatever device, you're at the website. So we may be seeing the end of these sorts of things, but they're still popular. People aren't clipping coupons like they used to, because when they see a coupon now, they can take that picture of it, and then stores can scan it with their barcode scanner and it works. So, but we still are seeing things like infomercials, and these are just a part of different types of television commercials that we do see out there. A good example is certainly Phil Swift for Flex Seal. This is an infomercial. Most of the time, these will be shorter, 30-second bits, 15-second bits, sometimes for a minute. Commercials have had a tendency in recent times to go to these shorter sorts of formats, but repetition of the same message with consistency many times over time is shown to be very effective way to do it. Sometimes the infomercials will feature testimonials. These could be everyday users or celebrity testimonials like we often see with major brands hiring famous people, sports celebrities of all types really, and having them be pitchmen for the product or service. What makes this work is that the organization is prepared for this, responds quickly. I mean, if you're trying to engage the public and you're trying to get an immediate response from them, then certainly you have to keep in mind that immediate response is going to make the whole thing work. Okay, folks, that's what I wanted to talk about this time. I'll talk to you again soon.